All right, everyone, this is big news. It was first reported on yesterday. Of course, I'd already made 5 videos, so I couldn't make, I wasn't going to do 6. It didn't make any sense. North Korea appears to be dismantling its main missile site. That is, it's moved certain materials out of there. They've sort of talked in a little bit of a hushed way lately about continuing the denuclearization process. Trump thus has come out and said, well, this is good. We're still working. Yesterday in his speech, he's like, well, we're still working on getting the POW remains. That's difficult because North Korea wants money for the remains. If I were Trump, I'd say, fuck it. Just give them the money. Who gives a shit? They're dismantling a missile site. They've stopped their propaganda broadcasts. You've had a summit. There are plans for further meetings. Just pay them. It doesn't matter. These are the prisoner of war remains. Some of them, these remains, they're going to be requisitioned by people, a spouse, a child, a very close relative who remembers them in person. You'd have to be very old, but you understand. Just give them the money. What do they want? $1 million for a bunch of remains that they have no use to North Korea. But they do need to excavate them in some cases. That means that they're going to have to actually try to identify the remains. It will take money. It is fair, I guess, to pay them for their effort if they're doing that. It's like, it's no use to them. Uncle Sam's loaded, and North Korea's not. Give them a show of goodwill and pay them for the remains unless they're asking some exorbitant amount, and don't even bother to negotiate the amount. That's what I would do. As far as the missile side, though, this is a major victory for Trump. I mean, even people on like CNN stuff have to discuss it. And you can tell they don't like having to discuss the fact that Trump has scored a major win here. No, whenever something like this happens, they're like, well, this was the doing of Seoul. It was South Korea. If it goes catastrophically wrong, though, you can guess that they're going to say, well, it's 100% Trump. No other party had any share of the responsibility or blame for this catastrophe. But if things go really well, Trump had nothing to do with it. They've done this on the economy multiple times. When the economy started to slip a little bit there, regarding the stock market, you'll remember, now the Trump economy is kicking in. From this point forward, the economy is all Trump. Then it started to rise again, and it was the Obama economy again. It was magical how that happened. For a brief moment in time, for about a week, Trump was totally responsible for every economic situation in the entire world. Then all of a sudden it was Obama again. I don't know. Obama's really pervasive too. Several years on, everything that goes right is still, somehow it's the responsibility of the Democratic Party. It's very odd how this works. As far as North Korea goes, though, you can't decide that this isn't a victory. The missile launches are more of a general provocation with regards to North Korea's historical behavior than nuclear tests. Only a few atomic tests ever occurred. Missile launches, every time anyone got pissed off, anytime anything happened in the region, missiles went flying off. In the latest round before their final nuclear test, you'll remember, one of the big provocations, they fired a missile, a type of Dong missile, right over Japan. They fired it over Japanese airspace, causing massive condemnation. That's a bigger provocation. Look, something can go dreadfully wrong. The Japanese could have said, okay, blow it out of the air. Then fired on it and, have debris raining down on Tokyo or something. It would have been a catastrophe as far as diplomacy goes. If that had happened, you probably wouldn't have seen a summit. The only summit you would have seen is a summit of Japan, South Korea, and U.S. leadership discussing how to invade. So it would have been a big problem. By the way, this is also a victory for the Korean people. Look, the closer they get to finally ending the Korean War, the closer they get to reunification, or at the very least, the ability of the two states to have fully normalized diplomacy and no longer a war footing. North Korea's economy is going to skyrocket when the war inevitably does finally end. The only difference is one way it ends because a war has caused massive destruction and North Korea becomes subjugated, hopefully by South Korea, not by China, or by DC. Long wars of occupation never work very well for our particular military stratagems. Or it reunifies peacefully. It's looking more like the latter than a few years ago. A few years ago, I would have said there's maybe a 10% chance that North Korea will escape inevitable nuclear annihilation. Now it's looking better than 50-50, and that's thanks to Trump's leadership style. Now, he's trying to export that admittedly good style of diplomacy that worked with North Korea to Iran. I'm not sure that it'll work the same. Again, there are cultural differences between Iran right now run by a liberal representative government. That's a lot different from a strong-arm dictator from East Asia. There's a big cultural difference. There's certainly a massive political difference. You've got to understand, I believe it was around the same time period that the sort of religious theocratic groups took over Iran. Wasn't that in the 1950s, around the same time that North Korea starts falling into disarray due to commie uprising? I believe it was around the same time period. In fact, it may have even been the same year. So lots of weird shit happened in the 50s. I don't know, I'd have to brush up on my history of the political situation in Iran a little bit more. But within Iran, you do have a representative government. You have strong-arm tactics at the executive level, sort of like maybe a tin horn situation, but it is an elected body. They have a representative system. There's no such comparable thing in North Korea. Kim Jong-un runs everything along with his military and advisory staff. Although you have a body politic, a group, the Great People's House or whatever, it's appointed. It's not really democratic in the sense that you would generally understand it. But Kim Jong-un, I think, has shown that he's maybe smarter than his father. Kim Jong-il ultimately was a little bit of a failed leader. Now, North Korea's economy went sour. They had several famines, and they didn't really achieve the nuclear thing. In fact, Bill Clinton had to throw free uranium their way and say, please don't develop a weapons program, which was the most disastrous, stupid mistake in U.S. Diplomatic history. We literally gave a hostile state nuclear weapons, essentially speaking, and then he refused to do anything about it, and W did too, because he's just a warmonger. He wants to go in and invade a state like Iraq where he knows, hey, after shock and awe, we can just, continue butchering and occupying. And then our troops will get shot at. Haha, it'll be funny because then I can pretend to be sad. That's what George W. Bush wanted to do. It would have been a slaughter fest in North Korea. There wouldn't have been an occupation. There just would have been massacres and mayhem. Not his kind of war. He preferred to invade like a cowboy and then have a slow burn of people being slaughtered over and over because he was a sadist. Sort of like John McCain. He would like that kind of war. He'd like a war with Iran, not with North Korea, I think, so much. He'd rather go and pick on the Iranians. That's why he's so angry lately, too. It looks like Trump's going to at least attempt to restructure the pre-existent nuclear deal, which it wasn't even really a deal. It wasn't official. It was just basically Obama said, hey, I'm giving you money, please don't make nukes. Maybe you'll allow inspections once in a while after shuttling around your nuclear material if you're actually making weapons. It's a totally toothless deal. I don't think we need a deal at all. I don't think they're trying to build nuclear weapons, but if they are, that deal wouldn't have stopped it. And all these Democrats saying, well, no, a deal that's shitty is better than no deal. No, not really. It's quite a bit worse because we gave a bunch of money in order to secure a deal that did nothing. With North Korea, it looks like we might end up getting a binding solution. The real issue is that North and South Korea, though, need to talk. When Trump backs off for a while and just sends Pompeo, people think he's not leading. He is. He's letting Korea make Korean decisions. That means North and South Korea. It doesn't mean the U.S. or China or anyone else. These are interested parties. Kim Jong-un meets with Jinping. He meets with Putin. That's normal. He has a meeting with Trump. They have a summit in Singapore. That's good. And it's good. The South Korean president, he has talks with Shinzo Abe and with Jinping as well. It's a good thing. But ultimately, North and South Korea are the ones that have to sign the official treaty ending the war. They're the main parties of the war, North and South Korea, not the U.S. and North Korea. We're involved. We're certainly the group leader if there's a war effort, but South Korea is the one that would be, ending the war insofar as, hey, we actually exist in Korea itself. If reunification happens, they're not unifying with the U.S. North Korea is not becoming a U.S. state. It's becoming half of a unified Korea. That involves them. But seeing them dismantle a missile site, their missiles were a much greater provocation on a routine basis than their nuclear program. The nuclear program got them labeled a rogue state by most of the world. The missile program got them condemned even by groups like China. Ultimately, that's what it was about, making more and more missiles, and that was a major provocation towards the U.S. too, because they were developing missiles that could reasonably hit a place like Hawaii or Guam or the coast of Alaska. That was a big problem. If they had ever developed a missile that was even more sophisticated and could hit mainland U.S., there may have been a nuclear conflict over it. There very much could have been. Thankfully, it looks like that won't happen. And the fact is, once this site is dismantled, unlike the nuclear site where they just sort of bombed the entrance and it was unusable to begin with, the missile site, it'd take quite a long time to reset that up, wouldn't it? Need a fairly sophisticated launching system for missiles that are the size of school buses, I believe. But yeah, some people are trying to downplay this, and they're like, well, you know, just dismantling a missile site, it doesn't mean anything. It's a symbolic thing more than it is a pragmatic thing. That's very much true. But symbolism matters. Again, that's why Trump is winning. He understands that concept. Within the context of politics, as North Korea conducts them, symbolism and respect and nobility and the show, the floor show of politics, is just as important as what you've actually on the ground, down in the nitty-gritty, actually managed to accomplish. Obama didn't think this. Most people in D.C. don't appear to understand this. I think that Trump has made great strides towards making peace in Korea. And hopefully North and South Korea, they'll have another border meeting and sign a piece of paper saying we're no longer at war. And then all that artillery can finally just be Korean artillery. Nobody will feel concerned except for China. That's about all. Peace out.